Welcome to Influence Spotlights. I'm very pleased to be here with John Sant Ambrogio, author of his second book, Women Rising. John, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You have quite a background that I'm very impressed with. Tell our audience a little bit about your background.
Well, I am a cellist, musician. I, by the grace of God, got into the Boston Symphony. There were 11 people that if they hadn't done it, I wouldn't have got in. And you say, what are you talking about? Well, Mrs. Goldberg comes under our ladder where I'm painting a barn in the Berkshire Mountains. And she says, John, do you know there's a last minute audition for the Boston Symphony? There was no internet. This was 1959. I would never have known about it. That's only the beginning. So I am very grateful to God for me getting into the Boston Symphony. It was such I was a school teacher without a job, and this was fantastic. Wow. So
it's amazing how those little coincidences have ripple effects that last the rest of your life. Two of your daughters are both musicians, aren't they?
Right. Yes. They're wonderful musicians. Steffi, the violinist, now teaches at the University of Nevada. And my daughter is a soloist, and she solos all over the world. And she's one of the best. Well, she's just one of the best cellists in the world. I'm prejudiced. I'm a father, and she teaches me now. She tells me what to do. And they all do. My kids all tell me what to do, and it's good.
I imagine they had a huge impact on you writing this book.
Well, yes, very much so. There are so many reasons that I wrote it, but my daughter, the cellist, has had to endure a lot of prejudice and situations which were not respectful to a woman. And that was one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I saw what women had to go through. And I was very touched also by my mother, who was such a wonderful person. And I saw some of the challenges that she had. And keep in mind, for instance, when I got into Boston Symphony, there were only 3 women in the orchestra. Today, it's more than 50% probably. And there was a reason why that they even had women at that time, because they couldn't find a good man second harpist. So they hired, 4 years earlier than I got in, they hired a woman. But she didn't have a dressing room. She had to change her clothes in the harp case. So it was really very hard. And I've seen all my life, I've seen what difficulties and the way they're not treated often equally. I think we're making progress, but I think that it's still tough for women.
One of the things that occurs to me is that you have seen the value of women being in the orchestra and the impact it's had. And I imagine it's been overwhelmingly positive. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Oh, it's been just wonderful. Yeah. And it's interesting that in so many different areas in our economy and everything else, when women are treated equally, like Linda Gates made a big article about this, about how when women are given equal rights, the economy improves tremendously. And this is so important. But anyway, I've always been very supportive of women, and that's the reason I wrote the book. I thought, well, let's use story and suspense and spiritual thoughts to get the message across rather than lecture, the audience.
Tell everybody how you became or decided to become an author.
Well, actually, my former wife was the concertmaster of the St. Louis Symphony, and she injured herself, and she had to leave St. Louis, and I was there by myself, and I wanted some things to do. So I started to write a book, and that's the first book I wrote about how I almost destroyed the Boston Symphony and other stories. And that's how they got me going. And after I finished that book, which did very well, actually, I was surprised. But then I decided, I can write it. I can write again. And so I wrote, and I just finished my third book, and I would like to write some more. There are things that I feel strongly about that I'd like to get out to the public. So,
one of the things that really strikes me is, growing up as a kid, I really did not like writing, and I now absolutely love taking the time to write most mornings. I find it's surprising to me how much I enjoy the process. Is that the same for you?
Yes, it is. And I am just amazed, not to get religious about this, but I am amazed that what comes to me, it just astonishes me, these different ideas that come to me and create the story, like Women Rising. All these different things that happened, they just came to me. And I just, wow. And I guess it was a gift from God, because I didn't really know what I was going to do. It just all came and worked out. And so anyway.
That's a common theme. One of the things that really surprises me is how often I hear authors talk about, it's almost like I become a vessel for this to come through. And I think of it as being similar to flow. Is that your experience of it?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. I feel very strongly that that's it. And, there are several other books that I want to write, and they're about things that I would like to see people view them differently than they are now. So, but I don't like to. I also find storytelling is a good way to get a message across, much better than lecturing and telling people, you got to do this, you got to do that, So.
With story, I think people's defenses have a tendency to go away, don't they?
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. They're interested in the story and what's going to happen. And that keeps them there for a while, I think.
Explain a little bit about your creative process and how you end up going through this process of getting from kind of not an idea to a complete book. What does that look like for you?
Well, I think one of the things that happens is that we all read books and we read messages and we hear the news and all of these things. And those are the things that say, why can't we just look at it differently? And then I start thinking about, I could write about that. And so that's what happens to me about that process, which is very much, and also it's also interesting. I've had some incredible conversations recently with a dear friend who goes to jails and works with the people. And from that, we often learn what it is that causes people to do certain things. And so important is our background. Occasionally, we rebel against it. And when I was a teenager, I started rebelling against some of the things that my father wanted me to do. But there is also a tremendous effect about the environment you grow up in and live and see. And that can make a great difference. And I saw my mother was so incredibly unprejudiced towards any religion, any race, and she saw someone who was African American on the street, and she was a wonderful piano teacher, my mother, and she offered that person free piano lessons. My mother was an established piano teacher, and that person today is an incredible journalist, and the affirmation of someone can make such a difference in their future, in their life.
It's about service, isn't it?
Yes, it
At
is.
some level, do you see what you do as a service that it must be that what you're trying to do with your words and these ideas that come to you is to serve people by giving them alternative viewpoints. Is that right?
Yes, yes, and with Women Rising, I want to reach all the different kinds of people, the people who don't believe that women are equal. I want to reach the woman who they may not think they're equal, and I want them to stand up and to know who they are. As I'm kind of a silly guy, and when I take walks, I walk all the time for exercise after I practice, and I when I see women often on the beach and we're talking, I give them a card, and Women Rise, and I say, and you're going to save the world, you women. Do you understand that? And so I like doing that, and I want to bring that out to people, and to women, and to men. So, and I want to give courage to men who have to stand up to help. And I think we notice, you can get this out, but in our time, in our country, we have so often people that act in a certain way because they're afraid to act in the way their conscience is telling them to act. And I want to reach those people too, that they will look at the issue and the fairness, and not just like, Liz Cheney was able to stand up, whether you believe her or not. She was willing to take the risk of losing her position because she was going to speak the truth no matter what. And you don't have to agree or anything, but that in itself, I find, is so brave.
As somebody who's a little to the left of center, I find few people in politics today that I'm more impressed with than Liz Cheney. What an amazing act of courage that woman has had. It's really been amazing.
It is amazing.
One of the things that I think also, and we'll get into the book a little bit, is my sense of the end game for this book is to have people understand how great it can be when people are working together. Men and women, like you were talking about, different races, that sort of thing. And I feel like that is like the core to what you're trying to accomplish. Talk a little bit about that, would you?
Yes, well, I do, and I don't want to give away the ending to those people who are possibly going to read the book, but you will find that in the end, the adversaries, the people that are arguing with each other about all this, that somehow they are brought together, and it seems almost impossible. For instance, one of the Medito, who is attempting to murder the leader of Men and Women Together, he even goes through an incredible life change when he realizes that the people that he was against and who should fear him, and that they are totally forgiving. And that in itself is so important. For instance, I try to always love whoever has a different opinion than I do. And I think that's one of the values of the book, I hope and feel, is that we do forgive each other and try to work together.
And don't you think that one of the paths to that forgiveness is appreciating the story of the other person?
That is so important, because so often we judge other people when we don't know where they came from and what has happened to them. And that's why, as I told you, I have a dear friend, Chris Jones, who has been working with people in prison. It is so important that he finds what they went through and what their background was and how their parents treated them. And let's be fair to those parents who treated them wrong. Their parents may have treated them wrong. And where did that all come from? I can't tell you where it started, but we have to be aware of that, I think.
And the result is such a richer experience as a human being, isn't it?
Yes, it is a wonderful, rich experience. It's so, and I just tell this funny story of in the Boston Symphony. When I first got in, they were we were rehearsing with this wonderful pops conductor, Arthur Fiedler, and the orchestra was treating him terribly. Oh. And I had no idea what was going on. So during the rehearsal, I went up to one of my friends, who was one of the 3 women in the orchestra, and I said, "What's going on? Why are they treating him so badly?" And she said, "John, I had a meeting with 100 men, and I wanted to change this. And you know what happens when 100 men get with one woman, and and they didn't want to listen to me, but they finally did, and we treated him well the next time. And you know what happened?" I said, "No, what happened?" And she said, "Well, because what happened is why we still treat him terribly. He thought we were doing the cold shoulder treatment, and so he had a mild heart attack. So we never treated him well again." So, it's a true story.
He was an amazing conductor, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. And, yeah. He actually gave me a ride once when I was hitchhiking.
How big. And I think he turned the orchestra, the Boston Pops, around, didn't he?
Oh, yes. What he did is incredible. Yeah. Great.
Tell everybody a little bit about the story of Women Rising.
Well, what happens, the center character, Bob, is macho and very against giving any control to women. And what happens is, when they're at a party, a meteor-like sphere goes over the earth and sends down rays that affect women at first, only women, and makes them grow over 4 months period, huge, 2 more feet taller. And the men are furious. The mafia says, "No, this can't be." So what happens is that he decides that he can't take it, and he runs away from home, because his wife has got a job now at the same company he was working, and he's making less money than she is. So he can't take it. He leaves. He runs away. But while he's away, and of course his wife, who really loves him in spite of the fact that he never hit her, but he always bossed her around, she loves him dearly, and she's so upset. And finally, he comes back, because while he's away, he sees all these other men who are so troubled, and they don't know how to handle it. And so he tries to help them. And in his process of helping others, it makes him think differently. And he comes home, and he comes back. And then a lot of different things happen, but he and the wife of their dear friends start an organization called Men, Women Together. and they are doing very well. But there's another group called tough guys, and they don't like that. And so they do everything they can to stop that. And they try to kill him. They try to do all kinds of things. They try to shame him. And you wonder if it's going to happen, because how are they going to come through this? But what happens, the main thing is that after all of this happens, you see the character change of the people. And you eventually, the meteor is going to come back, and you're going to find out what happens. But what does happen is that all of the people, the ones on one side or the other, finally make peace with each other. And that is very interesting to see how that happens and what causes them to do it. But anyway, that's what the story is about. And the one funny scene, the mafia is furious, and the doors bang in where they're having a meeting, and their wives come in, and they are now 2-3 feet taller than the men, and they say, "You are going to start," they're looking down on them, "you're going to start an Italian restaurant. No more of this nonsense." And they said, "You can't tell us to do that." And one of them grabs them and by the bottom and bangs them against the wall and says, "You are going to listen." And another woman says, "That's my husband. Let me bang him against the wall." So they do. Anyway, they decide, and they do start an Italian restaurant. But it's very interesting how the whole process, there's so many things I'm not telling you, happen that make them move in different directions.
Two things that occur to me are, number one, the main character's recognition that even though his wife has grown to be so much bigger, he still needs to come back. That must be a huge shift for him in his mindset. Talk a little bit about that, would you?
Yes. Well, what is hopeful about our universe is that many of us do change our minds about things, and we open up. And I feel that it's a spiritual gift that comes to us that helps us to open up. I tell you, I pray for Putin, not that he wins, but that he listens to the messages that are coming. And what does happen, that is one of the things that I want to get across in the book, is that open up your mind to the information and check if it's really correct. And there are other sources you can tell. I remember someone arguing with me about something was true in the news, and I said, "Well, why don't you just check all these other sources of information, all these other, because this, what you're saying here, I think there's only one or two that are saying that, but there's so many others that is." So we must open, and that's why, for instance, I feel so strongly that we should have the possibility for people who have no income, their children could go to college, because when we have more learning, then we often will open up our consciousness to other possibilities. That's what I feel.
It's surprising to me the parallels of what you're talking about in your book mirror what's going on in this country politically, and at some level, just this lack of willingness to take that time and understand, to take the time and appreciate where the other side is coming from,
right,
and to quit blaming the other side for being the problem. And my sense is that your book really speaks to that in a pretty deep way, doesn't it?
I hope so. I'd like it. I, for instance, asked two women who did not know each other, And so their answers were not affected by each other. I said, how is it that when I go out in the countryside, I'm seeing all these, I live in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, or Santa Barbara, and I see all these signs saying, supporting Trump. And when I come in the city, I see only mostly for Biden or for the other side. And why is that? And they both gave me the same answer, which I thought was very important. The people in the country often feel that the people in the city don't realize what they're doing out there with the cattle and with the sheep and with the farms and all of that, and providing all that food for those people in the city who couldn't grow a daisy. And the people in this city don't often recognize how valuable it is what's happening, as we all are contributing to each other. So this was so interesting to me that I could see how there has to be a way of bringing us all together. Whether we live out there, we live in Virginia or in Oregon, and find mutual reasons and things that we can bring us all together and enjoy life.
And you don't think that lecturing is the way to do it?
No, I don't think so. I think that word lecturing is, right now, is not a nice term, but maybe later we'll get back to the nice lecture.
But I think the other side of the story, and I think, pun intended, is if I can tell the story of the other side, and I imagine to some degree the main character was able to tell the story of the tough guys and understand in the book why they were behaving the way they were, that having that ability to tell each other's story is a great unifier.
Yes, I think you're right. It is. That is the name of the game, to understand what the other person has endured, been through. And it's remarkable to me right now where my book club has been working with a book called the Beethoven in Love, Opus 139. And it's very interesting because by reading it as a novel, there are so many statements about what Beethoven went through. And, you really don't know what anybody else is going through, really. And that I was just struck by it, that Beethoven was able to be one of the greatest composers of all time and endured difficulties with his family, all kinds of things, and never got married and never had someone who stayed with him and loving. And he wrote the most incredible music, and he loses his hearing, and yet he still writes some of the best music ever written. So it makes us realize that in spite of what a lot of people go through, they still manage to express goodness again. But that doesn't mean we don't take into our thoughts and understand what other people have been through.
I think it's one of the shortcomings of the human race is our ability to either demonize or idealize somebody, and neither has an accurate portrayal of the person that we're thinking about, does it?
No, you're right. And we really, not to get religious, but we should see everyone as created by God, and let's just look and work to see them spiritually, just as I try to see Putin spiritually. I find that I feel very strongly that all evil or wrong things will eventually be uncovered. I mean, look at the empires, Roman Empire. Look at all the different things, the things that even the people who were Christians did in the Crusades, and we find out about it, we learn about it, and that we progress above things like that. And and I feel many of the Islamic terrorists will eventually see the truth. And I can't remember the name of the book, but it was a wonderful Islamic woman who wrote a book about this, that this really wasn't what Islam was about. And so we all have to grow in our understanding. And again, education. Education is so important.
Talk a little bit about who your intended audiences are for this book.
Well, it's for everyone. But I want women to be confident that they are equal. And that's one group. I want women who know that to have support and say, this guy agrees with me. I want men who don't think women are equal, and I want them to ponder some of these thoughts and things that we have put out there. And I want the men who are supportive to feel they've got a team with them. We're all one. We're all working together for good. Those are, well, and for kids, for grown-ups, for older people, I would like to get the message out to everyone.
I have tremendous respect for what you're trying to accomplish. You and I are very much on the same page in terms of our perception of other people, of races, of gender, that sort of thing. And I think the thing that I struggle with the most is people's lack of understanding and almost a desire not to understand, not to take the time to have a better story that's more accurate about the people or groups that we're characterizing. I feel like your book is really hitting on that in a big way.
Well, thank you. Well, that's what I would like to do, and I get that message out, And I'm so grateful to women for all they've done for me in my life. And so,
what kind of feedback are you getting on the book?
Well, I've been getting good feedback. Many people love it and like it. My daughter's one who said, "Yeah, Dad, it's good. It's a good idea, but it's got to be longer. You got to fill it out more, or this." And we have the second edition now going, and my kids are supportive, but they're very, very busy themselves, so they don't, But when my daughter Sarah Sant Ambrogio, who on Prejudice is one of the best cellists in the world, he reads like 50 or 60 books a year, and so I'm not going to criticize her for not reading everything about my book over and over.
One of the things that you've mentioned a number of times, and I really think that we ought to just put it on the table, is talk about this book from a religious or a spiritual standpoint. You've kind of touched on a couple of pieces, but there is definitely a big element of spirituality and religion in the book. Talk a little bit about how you see that flowing.
Well, in their arguments, when the tough guys are arguing with Soapy's arguing with Bob on television and in the station, both sides use the Bible to verify what they're saying. And but they because often in the New Testament you'll have things where the women should listen to the man and so forth. But that only makes it more real that this really happened, because that's the way history was. But also in Galatians 3:28, verse 28, it says, when you're in heaven, you're not either man or woman. You're not this religion. You're not that. You're not, you're not this race. And so we see each other spiritually, and that's what's the most important thing, rather than looking at someone from the aspect of what their appearance is. I have to work as a man to not just view a woman as beautiful, or a woman who's not as beautiful. No, that's not the reality. The reality is they're both children of God, if you believe in God. And that happens to be what my third book is. Are you kidding? And it's about four people, two fraternal twins and two scientists who become very dear friends, and they argue, but friendly arguments about God and whether God exists. And so that's another message that I'd like to get. I have someone close to me who was an atheist, and I didn't want to lecture. So I thought I'd write story with suspense and different things. And I noticed that some of this, like Sandy is saying to Chad, John, if the sun was further away, we'd burn to death. And if it was close, we'd freeze. But no, that's just coincidence. So his God at this stage in the book is coincident. So anyway, I'm trying to get messages across that I feel strongly about. And right now, I just feel very strongly that we have to, as a nation, come together and not go after each other. And I think that's so important.
Boy, it is such a powerful message in such a divided world we are living in now. And I know it's specific in some ways to the United States, but I think we're seeing it globally, and it's a message that we all need to take a step back and just appreciate everyone at some level without condoning the stuff that's really icky, as you talked about with Putin, that sort of thing. Couple of last questions. When you look at your process of writing this book, what were some of the surprising things that you learned as a result of this?
Well, so many times as I was writing, I still tried to get information. And, Bill Gates and Linda Gates, I saw a tremendous article about how she proved that when women were treated equally in a country, their economy went up like crazy. And you just look at the world where women are subjugated. The economies are not good in the country. Well, there were things like that would touch me and make me, let's see if I can get this aspect into the book. But again, I'm not trying to lecture. I just want us to realize. And I think that all women aren't perfect. I mean, don't act perfectly. All men don't act perfectly. But often there's a quality, the feminine quality of motherhood, of caring and nurturing. If you look at animals and watch them, how the mother looks after the child, it's amazing. And so that quality is one that we need. And, and I feel that women give us that quality when we express that. And I feel we all have both feminine and masculine qualities. so we can express them.
Men and women together. Boy, that is a huge message that what a world we would live in when we can get to that place.
I know. I think so.
John Sant Ambrogio, you can be found if you do a search for John Women Rising. Women Rising by John Sant Ambrogio will come right up, including a cover image of the book. And I just have tremendous admiration. You, sir, are an enlightened guy. And I think enlightened means, in my book, an understanding of the rich tapestry of life. And I just can't tell you and can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this and to write the book Women Rising.
And also, I just add, I have a website if anybody wants to go to it, and it's John Sant, all small letters, .com. JOHN Sant, SANT, right next to each other. And when you try to do it, my name comes up, and then you have to change it again. It's johnsant.com. And all my books are there and stuff. If anybody wants to read that stuff, they can. So,
thank you so much for doing this. This was just lovely. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it, John.
Thank you very much.